Dr. Mark Changizi here with your Science Moment. Today we're going to talk about the failures or the weakness of being well-intentioned. Now, I've talked about being well-intentioned from sort of a different angle, something that was really relevant in terms of political oppositions and so forth. And there's this, this bias that people have to view their opposition as demons. And what I mean by that is that you're treating them as if they understand and agree with the principles of your community, and they agree that those are the good things. Like, they agree with us as to what the good is, and they're purposely trying to undermine it. And that's not what's going on at all. People in other communities, political, socio-political movements have different sets of principles, and that's what drives their good. What makes their movement evil, that is in the eyes of the other movement, is that they have the wrong sets of principles. It's not about whether they're well-intentioned or bad-intentioned. That's irrelevant. It matters whether they're well-intentioned if they're in your community. The idea is that, okay, we already all agree on the principles. Now we can ask whether when you did that thing, Doug, were you doing it with good intentions, or were you like trying to subvert it for your own personal gain? Or, you can ask that, but those are intra-movement kinds of issues. They don't really apply when you're talking about other movements, because movements always come to evolve to have justifications post hoc for the positions they have. But here I want to talk about something else about well-intentioned and the weakness of well-intentionedness. And it's that even if you're in a community, you're in a movement, and we're all together agreeing that these are the principles that we are pushing for. We all agree on what the good is. And the problems with a well-intentioned community, that's authoritarian. Right? That's what if you are in a community that is authoritarian, that is, you're pushing an authoritarian kind of viewpoint. Maybe it's justified for utilitarian reasons because it just raises the overall welfare, whatever it might be. The problem with well-intentionedness, if you have a utilitarian viewpoint or any kind of viewpoint that justifies authoritarianism or centralized control, is that well-intentionedness from the centralized authorities usually means very little. And it's for a standard reason that's been known for a long time, and Milton Friedman made it nice and clear 50 or so years ago, or maybe longer. And it's just that the standard, there's this two by two matrix in terms of when money gets spent on something. Well, there's two possibilities. It could be my money being spent on something, or it could be somebody else's money that I'm going to spend on something. And I could be spending that money on something for me, or I could be spending that money on somebody else or some other group. Now, when I'm spending my money on me, well, I'm going to try to make a really good deal, and I'm going to want to get really high value. Right? That's really the best case. But the other combinations aren't so good. I could be spending my money on you, in which case I'm not that interested in the value that you get. I'm going to be trying to minimize money as well. So I'll be spending very little, you'll be getting very little value of it. The other could be that I'm spending your money on me, in which case I'm not really too worried about how much you're going to have to spend. I just want good value to me. So it's going to be good value, but for a lot of money, your money. And the worst case of all is when I'm spending somebody else's money for somebody else. Now I don't care how much I spend, and I don't care how good the value is at all. When you're in a movement, when you have the viewpoint that centralized authorities should be making decisions to spend money, that is, it's everybody's money and thus not their money, and they're doing it for everybody, again, it's not for themselves, you're in this fourth category. And they really could be well-intentioned. They truly could be all well-intentioned, never pocketing and lining their pockets, not just doing it for raising their own power, and becoming grandiose. All of the things could be going perfectly right. But when authoritarianism is done through centralized control, it is always spending other people's money for other people. And inherently, you will have a massive spends with little gain. That's just the nature of it. Now, so this is the sense in which well-intentionedness, even within your own community, when it's done by centralized authorities, means very little. It tends to wreck things. That is, even in the utilitarian lights of the lockdowners, everything failed even by their own lights, because they were spending massive amounts of other people's money to help supposedly other people. They were hanging at home, doing Zoom calls. Everything was being wrecked for everything around, and spending a lot of money to wreck everything, but that's okay, because it's not like they were thinking, oh, that's okay because it's not affecting me. No, that's just the nature of it. They could have had good intentions, but again, they're having good intentions to use somebody else's money to spend on somebody else for their ingenious scheme that invariably leads to basically failure, right? For the reasons that we just talked about. Now, what was the best case? The best case is when I'm spending money on me, right? That's inherently decentralized because it also implies that you need to be spending your money on you and Doug on Doug. The only way that you can have the kind of value that comes from well-intentionedness is that it be decentralized. You want well-intentionedness to push forward certain kinds of principles, and you need it to be done at the level of the individual spread across the communities. It has to be done in a decentralized manner, not centralized. Only then do you end up with the decisions being done with good intentions for the money that they spend, which is their own money, for themselves. And that's inherently decentralized because it has to happen one person, one individual at a time, integrated across all of society, right? So this is just by way of saying well-intentionedness. I'm trying to undermine this idea that it matters so much, right? It doesn't matter in terms of if I tell you, look, your political opposition is well-intentioned. You're like, why are you defending them? No, it's just a mathematical fact, right? And then even if we were in our own community, we already agree, we're already a socio-political community, we already agree, like, here are our principles, and someone might say, okay, we're gonna have the centralized committee try to make this happen. And they're going to be really well-intentioned. I can even vouch for them. They're all well-intentioned. I say, no, I don't want that, because I know that well-intentionedness that they have, even though we share the same principles in this case, still means nothing because they don't have the ability to do what can only be done in a decentralized manner, individual by individual across the network, where individuals can make value spends for high-value products. In the very generalized sense. And that was your science moment. If you haven't gotten a copy of Dr. Tim Barber and my new book, Expressly Human, get a copy today from Amazon and give it a review. That's your science moment.